by Baragon's glowing horn, we are here at the last movie in the Showa era terror of Mechagodzilla.
Bargain bin aliens team their Gojira bot with Japanese Colonel Sanders and his droid daughter's pet dinosaur to fight Godzilla.
I don't know how to describe how I feel about this movie.
Yeah, we were talking about before we started shooting.
I don't hate it.
No, I don't hate it either. In fact,
but I don't like it.
Out of 15, I put it at number 10. It's not as well put together as a movie as the original Godzilla, or even Godzilla versus the Thing. Also, it wasn't as much fun as Godzilla versus Megalon or Godzilla versus Gigan.
You know, there's a couple different elements that I feel like really kind of take away from this movie. I don't feel the story is all that interesting, even though that they have some very interesting concepts in there that I don't think are really fully realized. It was going in the right direction for the series.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yep. We actually get characters with arcs. Major thing with the screenwriter was that, yes, the only woman to have ever written a Godzilla movie. More women should have written Godzilla movies.
Explain.
Her screenplay went through major changes, and she said something in here that really kind of struck me, and that was Takayama said her screenplay underwent several major changes prior to filming, but her main concern was that the integrity of Katsura, the cyborg girl, be preserved. Even after Katsura had been altered, she had emotions. As long as this idea was not removed from the script, I didn't care that much about what was done with it. The thing that really strikes me about that is the fact that Katsura's arc in this is, well, it's an arc. And that's something that is sorely missing from kaiju movies as a whole. It is something totally different from the past couple movies, and it is a breath of fresh air, and I really think that perhaps women in general might have been a little bit more interested in that aspect of films, because I think the boys and the men are like, oh, the monsters, and oh, the military, as we should, but at the same time, it's obvious that her touch to this movie made for a vastly different piece. It is worth mentioning that this movie marks the return of Ishiro Honda. You know, Honda's return, you would think that would mark this movie as like, oh my god, this is right back into the 60s, It's classic. And in some cases, yes, but in most cases, no, in my opinion. The fact of the matter is, I think the story on paper reads really well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But what ends up happening, the big problem is, and this is directly what you said, you're like, oh my god, everything looks so cheap.
Yeah, you know what, it does. The editing was cheap, the sets look cheap.
The aliens are probably at the all-time worst, by far. I know they're supposed to be the aliens from the previous movie, but there's practically almost no link. They're just not interesting. They're just kind of there to, oh, hey, I think they... Jesus Christ. Since you brought it up,
There's a crazy ass old guy. Doesn't say a word.
We were talking about the aliens, and now we're not even.
Well, he is an alien, isn't he?
We don't even know.
I don't know.
This guy has no dialogue. Is never really addressed. He's just kind of there, and he's always just kind of like hanging around Katsura and like looking at her and
probably
doing
smelling
stuff.
her while she sleeps. Katsura is angrily running away from after a conversation while one of the aliens. Old guy's just sitting there. It just was very awkward. And then there's another scene when he's walking with Katsura, and
they're teleporting powers.
Yeah.
When they would run, it would probably clip about 5 or 7 frames before they left, the actual frame. And it was very jarring. They do it not once, but I think twice.
Yeah.
I don't think they did it a third time. And it's just weird. Are we officially designating him as Japanese Michael Jeter?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's pretty fair.
It is in there. If you got a better name for him, comment.
Oh my god.
Oh, you want to talk about Katsura?
Oh, well, we can talk about Katsura and her father, the Japanese Colonel Sanders. They're the only 2 characters that we can actually remember their names of, and I think that's very important to note.
Yeah,
because
they actually had a good story to them.
Right. Even if they were extremely hammed. You want to do your Japanese Colonel Sanders impression?
A little bit of herbs and the spices. Katsura! Chicken fingers!
he ends up discovering or claiming that there are dinosaurs that exist in the world. Dude, I mean, that is just such a goddamn, like, ridiculous...
I don't think so. No. A giant moth, yes. A three-headed dragon made of gold scales, absolutely. But a dinosaur, God, Matt, they're prehistoric. Why would they exist still? Stupid.
Point being, so they introduced Titanosaurus, who is just a general dinosaur. And we'll talk about him in a minute. But the weird thing about it is that everybody not only rejects Mifune's claim that dinosaurs still exist, but they do it violently. And so much so that he ends up hating all of humanity and, you know, goes into business with the aliens to defeat, well, mankind. All over a f***ing dinosaur. In a world where Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Frankenstein, Baragon, and, you know, Sanda and Gyra from War of the Gargantuas exist.
These are commonplace.
What the f***? It doesn't make any sense.
What do you think about, by the way, the fact that the new monster is a dinosaur and not something from space or something alien-made that's a robot? Or what do you think? It's just an animal, really.
I mean, I like it. I mean, obviously it's a throwback to, you know, the creatures that would pop up 10 years, you know, prior.
Yep.
But I think what's nice about Titanosaurus is that he's not a big T-Rex, you know what I mean? Like Gorosaurus. He's not a big snake like Manga.
Manga!
He's his own creation, and I think he's one of the more interesting ones, to be perfectly honest.
Love the shots that they give some, like when it first appears after it attacks the sub. There's a low angle shot. It's really cool looking, and then when it meets Godzilla for the first time, there's this shot of Titanosaurus and Godzilla squaring off.
The 360, or not quite 360, but like
yeah, the camera kind of pans around, and that's just a really just cool shot, you know.
The special effects in this movie, there are some really like great
explosions, yeah.
But on the flip side, there's also some really bad stuff. Not necessarily cheap, necessarily, just sloppy. But you get some fantastic destruction scenes in here, and the thing is, we haven't had a good destruction scene in a long ass time.
Yeah.
Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus just completely laying waste to Tokyo.
In the same shot, mind you. That's kind of cool to watch too.
For the most part, I think Godzilla looks pretty decent in this movie.
What do you think about his intro? When he first shows up?
It's probably the most kick-ass Godzilla intro in the entire
the silhouette of him.
Obviously, a certain Gareth got the idea.
A certain Gareth. Gareth E. No, that's too obvious.
No.
G. Edwards, we'll say.
Yeah.
Did not appreciate the fact that we had to wait about 50 minutes in order to see that.
Well, obviously you're not a Godzilla fan then.
Clearly, I'm just doing this because maybe I'm more of a Titanosaurus fan.
I think you're more of a manga fan, personally.
Manga for president.
And Bryagon. But I really think that more so than a lot of movies, Godzilla really is just a secondary thought.
Yeah. And the movie's called Terror of Mechagodzilla. And Mechagodzilla's like a third wheel.
Just to cash in. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And this, of course, all leads to, you know, the finale, which is, you know, the big brawl between Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla. The human military comes in to help him, and that's interesting because that's, I think, the first time since like Smog Monster that the humans actually helped Godzilla to defeat a common enemy. And something very different, and it was something that I think was kind of thinking outside of the box a little bit. The fight was, it was alright. I did not like it nearly as much as Caesar and Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And in fact, I can't believe this. This is just like a reverse of that fight. Apparently, this was the lowest grossing Godzilla movie of all time. So Toho originally had no intention of retiring Godzilla, but by the time that Godzilla wades off to sea in that last shot, which is really, again, it's weird because you were pointing out, it's like...
It's almost like they knew.
Yeah, and it's this, you know, kind of beautiful, just like pull-out shot of, you know, Godzilla wading off to sea. Are you glad or happy that this was the last movie of this era? Could you have gone with a couple more, or should it have ended a couple movies ago, or...
If it would have ended somewhere around Gigan, I would have been good with that. Especially if it would have ended with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. That would have been a great way to end this era. It needed to end right now, you know, for a while.
Terror of Mechagodzilla, a very flawed movie fun aspects, definitely not my favorite, far from being the worst. I would say, medium Godzilla flick.
Yep, that's pretty much where I ranked it.
Some great aspects, but overall, it is what it is. So we are now officially out of the Showa era, and we are quickly heading towards the Heisei era, which is 10 years down the line. With the next movie in this lineup is Godzilla, or rather the return of Godzilla from 1984. So, before we go ahead and tackle Godzilla 1984, please stick around as Brian and I discuss our favorite, least favorite movies, monsters, characters, and all that fun stuff of the Showa era. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Monstrosities Showa era Godzilla recap. Coming soon to a vlog near you.